My name is Louskieter, and I am the Interim Programme Director of Tekano. It's really lovely to see the energy and the vibe, to also see kind of the interest. So we have a number of people joining. Yeah, so many people have obviously emailed using our different platforms of engagement, and we've received over 100 applications thus far. So, and it's increasingly kind of every day, especially as we're edging to the end of the recruitment campaign and the closing date for applications. I am very excited to invite a new cohort of fellows into the fellowship community. I mean, as a fellow who started off in cohort 1, it is really nice to see the catalytic community of social change growing in the Tekano community, especially how it links to social justice and health equity. I am going to, I mean, this is a space of engagement, right? It's not going to be me presenting. I'm wanting to engage and grapple with some of the questions you have, and some of the stuff that, you know, you've been thinking about in how you want to present and talk through your application. But more importantly, that we kind of use this opportunity to connect, you know, because beyond your application being successful or unsuccessful, you are still activists, people doing remarkable things and leading in social change. I mean, that's why your interest in this space and in this particular community. So I'm going to invite everyone to switch on your videos if it is allowable. I know the network has been awful in many places because of load shedding. But if you are able to, please, I would love to see people's faces and engage quite proactively in this space. I also have our colleagues, Tombi and our kind of comms capacity that's supporting Tekano at the moment, as well as their colleague, I don't know if they are here. So we have 2 support colleagues from Frey Media who's supporting us. And then we also joined, I see that Sadie Brown, one of our cohort 4 fellows are here. Hi, Sadie, shout out to you.
Hey, Lance.
You want to
hi,
show
everyone.
us your pretty face? Oh, you're already showing us your pretty face.
That's my picture. Hi, everyone. I'm just here to listen to what you guys have to say about the fellowship or your questions. We've been running a nice social media campaign as well to try to get you guys interested in this fellowship program. So thank you so much. I'm just I'm listening in. Thank you, Lance.
Thanks so much, Sadie. And just a special shout out to Sadie, who's literally like being our Tekano mascot, doing all the kind of engagements and PR, you know, just supporting and mobilizing the fellowship community to be part of this recruitment. I also see Kayla Bagg, who I know has, you know, taught in the, sorry, Kayla, I haven't been getting back to you with a lot of your engagements around the application process. I think it's just been difficult to respond to individuals. And that's why we tried to create a platform like this so that I can respond to different people. I see Miriam, I see Cindy, Sipukazi Ndoda, and Star Mundia. Hello to all of you and welcome. You can introduce yourselves using the chat. I'm also seeing Azola. Okay, cool. So, I mean, I'm probably going to first start with, you know, who we are as Tekano. So Tekano is a health equity organization, and our mandate is well, we take a social justice approach to health equity. So it's not your kind of normative health equity lens. So we're not kind of health access, although we obviously address issues of health or health outcomes or health access through the work that we do, but that the focus of our work is not primarily based on kind of service delivery or being kind of a health person or a public health person. In fact, we are interested in people and particularly leaders who's got a proven and kind of and have demonstrated, right, that a track record of being able to respond and be responsive to the structural, what we call structural and social determinants of health. And that includes land issues, it includes gender-based violence, it includes addressing issues of water and sanitation, housing crises. I mean, the list is endless of kind of, you know, the contemporary issues that are creating the conditions of inequity. So, and our fellowship community are fellows from a broad range of sectors and disciplinary or disciplinary fields, including kind of researchers or academics, people working in you know, IT and kind of, yeah, in the kind of IT world, computer science world, people who are social justice activists from NGOs, so non-governmental organizations and CBOs or community-based organizations. People who are part of social movements, people who are being embedded in the health system, working as, you know, medical doctors, nurses, etc. Community health workers, people who are in policy reform, economists, right, who's doing, you know, really critical policy analysis work. So we have a wide, broad range of actors, what we call, you know, social justice and health equity actors. And so we are also, obviously, when these different people bring their partnerships and their networks and institutions, organizations that they are aligned to kind of amplify their work for social change. So really what we're looking for are people who are doers, people who are able to, you know, have shown that their commitment to social justice through these various through various ways, right? And so what we offer is also an opportunity for you to grow and expand on your leadership journey. And that includes, you know, coaching, understanding of the value of kind of your own personal and professional development, but also your political kind of expansion. So growing your political base and understanding really deep, you know, issues, or understand or approaching issues, or these kind of what I call crises, very wicked problems and challenges in our country. And I mean, you don't have to be really struggling in this world to know that, you know, we are actually in a very serious time in you know, in history, as we are grappling globally with these multiple crises that we are sitting with, and that's creating unequal power relations, that's creating unequal distribution of resources, and, you know, where wealthy people are continuing to hoard wealth at the expense of everyday people. So we grapple with concepts like neoliberalism, neoliberal capitalism, you know, many other, you know, cis heteronormativity. So these are concepts we grapple with, you know, different, and they're endless. Political economy of health. So we really kind of build a conceptual base. So, you know, for our fellows, and many of them have been introduced to these conversations, to these concepts. Many of, you know, those who were introduced was an intellectual space in a very different environment. So while in an academic space, we are not an academic program, we're an intellectual program. So we're not, I mean, there's no, qualification at the end, although not, you know, the kind of normative qualification approach, but this fellowship opportunity is really about lifelong learning and how folks take seriously this understanding of learning being a lifelong project, and the importance of embedding yourself as a social change leader in the current national political, social, and economic climate, but also then how that is your kind of our national context, South African context, the communities that you're embedded in are all kind of the space from which we talk from and build international solidarity. In previous years, we've taken our fellows to Oxford, to London, to Spain, and also then to Cuba last year. So we also, connected to a global advocacy project, or global kind of, terrain of actors, but working on issues of equity globally. And so we are connected kind of in our immediate global community to the Atlantic Fellows for equity globally. So that's through the Atlantic Institute, who's kind of an umbrella body that supports 7 global fellowship programs across the world. So there's, many of you probably heard of the Racial Equity, Atlantic Fellows for Racial Equity. There's the Atlantic Fellows for Social Change in Australia and New Zealand, or Social Equity in Australia and New Zealand. There's the Equity Initiative in Thailand, and I think it's in Southeast Asia and South Asia. And there's brain health. So there's the Atlantic Fellowship for Brain Health. So we have a number of different fellowships programs like ours running in different contexts, right? So Tekano is one of 7 Atlantic fellowship programs. So if you become a Tekano Fellow, after going through our induction year, you will then be part of the global Atlantic Fellowship community, right? And that comes with different kind of experiences, learning experience that's curated, different kind of spaces of advocacy, different networks and relationships that you build to understand the equity project, and particularly the social justice project as a global one. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit about kind of who we are and what we do. If you have particular questions, so you can kind of, ask questions linked to, what we are and what we do, and then what we can do in the second kind of segment, and then transition to specific questions you might have around the application. And what we are looking for. And I can go through the application form if you want me to, but I thought let's start with conversation around, what Tekano is, what are you interested in Tekano, and kind of, what the work that we are doing broadly, and the work of our fellows. And then we can kind of go into a space where we explore, how I can support you with particular fellowship application process. And obviously we're drawing on Sadie's experiences as a kind of Code 4 fellow who've just kind of been celebrated as part of our lifelong community. Yeah, so I'm giving folks the opportunity now to engage. So if you can just put up your hand, and then I'll be aware that you have something to contribute. I'm also just checking the chat room. I know the chat room's quite busy. Sorry, I'm just opening the chats. So, Star from Pretoria, you're in the arts and media industry. Do you have specific questions linked to your field? I mean, arts and media is a big component of Tekano. We've had many journalists as fellows who've applied, and we work, including with Free Media, with different kind of organizations who are social justice organizations contributing to media, to the media industry, and kind of media relationships linked to social justice and health equity broadly. Becky Cisa is also another kind of partner of ours. There's so many others that we've worked with. Azola, who's worked as a healthcare consulting and implementation for vulnerable groups in remote and rural areas, so rural amplification there of health, very important group. You've worked in advisory and policy formulation, which is great. currently working in education and exposure for employment in underserved communities for young people. Yeah. Oh, employment or training. Really nice, Azola. Miriam is in the social care industry in the UK. That's quite interesting, Miriam. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about what you do and kind of how this connects to the work that we are doing and who we are. We have Cindy from Germany. Oh, that's quite nice that we're getting connections and interests from folks based in other countries. Oh, so you won't be applying for the fellowship, but passionate about social justice. I'm looking forward to connecting. Yeah, we're happy to connect with your interests in social work, and particularly SGM, which is, I think it's female genital mutilation in Southern Africa. Interesting areas. I know Kayla well, completing an MPH in epidemiology biostats at UCT. So yeah, Kayla and I connected because I was teaching on a course that Kayla was doing in MPH. I'm Mimi, social entrepreneur working in public health and development space, passionate about advancing rights for adolescents and young people in the area of SRHR. So really fantastic, diverse, group of people here on the call. So I'm interested to hear so please put on your mics or put up your hands and please engage. I mean, I'm really not here to talk to myself. So what can I support you with? Should we rather go into the application process and if folks have specific questions? Okay, so the hands are going up. Azola and then Kayla and then Mimi.
Hi, Lance. Thank you for the session. So I also joined the session with Sadie on the Instagram Live.
Okay,
one
great.
of the things, yeah, so one of the things, so I've completed my application, I think on the 15th or something like that. I wanted to know, do you get like confirmation message that your application has been completed because like you're using a specific email account, which the Google form says it gets captured. So at the end of the application, I just received, thank you for your interest. And I just wasn't sure whether my form has been submitted. So do you get a confirmation via email or do you not?
Ntombi, just because you're working on the back end of things, my assumption, so just going through the application myself when I was double checking, so it is a Google form, and like any other Google form, you can then get the option to choose whether you want the responses to be sent to yourself or not. But if you've gotten you should have kind of a notification that says, thank you for your interest and accepting this, and that should be sufficient to then inform you. I mean, Azola, if you want to check if we've received your application, just drop me an email afterwards and I can check for you if your application is there and have been received. If that would be a little bit easier.
Yes, no, I'll do that.
Okay, that's okay. Also, we do have the applications email if you want to follow up. So there is a recruitment email that you can send to, as well as a WhatsApp a number where if you have any problems or if you're unsure, then we can follow up to just check. But thanks so much for that very early application. I mean, it's a whole 15 days early. Kayla?
Hi, yeah, just wanted to say thanks for hosting this. I think it's interesting to see the other applicants and to see where everyone comes from and what fields everyone's from. I just have like a particular question. So when looking through kind of the website and what you guys do, there's kind of a focus, or from what I understand, there's a focus on coming into the program with an idea or with like a program or a project that you kind of are interested in and that you are passionate about and that you want to implement. And by the end of the year, you could gain the skills that you need to be able to implement that program or project in whatever capacity it is. So I'm just wondering if you have to have like a set program when you come into the fellows, and then like a kind of a second question to that is it possible to like work with an NGO to come up with the program collaboratively, and then through the Atlantic Fellows, kind of through Tekano as well, kind of come out at the end through with your NGO that you're working with this program? That's I hope it makes sense. That's my question.
Thanks, Kayla. That's a really good question. So just the short of it is, so Kayla, we're looking for people, what we're going to focus on for this recruitment is people who are actually doing the work, right? So you don't have to you don't have to have everything sorted out for yourself. And in many ways, so some fellows will come in with a very strong idea where they already have doing really innovative stuff in addressing, issues of equity, of health equity through kind of responding to the social and structural determinants of health. And for those fellows, we will support and kind of give some seed funding for especially new innovative solutions, right? That's being presented and that have the potential for scaling up. For other fellows, you might feel, and I was one of those fellows, right, Kayla, because I was also an academic in my MPH like you. I mean, I was busy with my MPH when I became a fellow. And for me, I was very unsure as to, what skills or what particular issue or area of work I'll be interested in. And so I came, in with not really wanting to work on a particular project in terms of my own project. I knew I was very passionate about sexual and reproductive health and rights, and I still am, and especially queer health. But through the so I could do some of that work and make those connections it's through the fellowship community that I was able to find social movements and NGOs to then deepen, my queer advocacy in health. But also I got to learn about decriminalization of sex work through Sis Dudu, who is also a Cohort 1 fellow. And so our relationship in terms of how I can produce evidence through research, which is a skill that I brought to the fellowship, to support and inform the broader calls for the decriminalization of sex work. And so coming into the fellowship, I had particular ideas, but actually my focus shifted to be able to think and support and bring my skills to support others in the community. So there's no real formula, right? Or standard formula. So if you have a strong, thing that you're doing right now and you feel like this thing is really working and you want to present it to us, on acceptance, and you want, into the fellowship and you really want to hone in on this particular kind of area of work or particular kind of intervention that you may be focusing on, we're happy to support you. And we'll obviously then support you with, the different kind of mentorship, skills, networks, opportunities that we offer to enable that work and for us to kind of see the kind of broader impact and support you to work towards that bigger impact. But we also want, because we are trying to build a catalytic community of change, there's a whole, community of fellows actually. And you might find that in that space, you are able to kind of see kind of where your niche area is and what your contribution could be to, health equity broadly. And and of course you can build your relationships, you can reach out to your NGOs because you bring that with you when you enter into the fellowship, and we will connect and support you and leverage off those relationships to enable then, how you connect with other fellows and other organizations that's connected to the broader Tekano community. That will then enable the work. So yeah, it's not a very clear set answer. Like I said, we are looking for fellows who actually have some idea, as to how to address the problems. It doesn't have to be perfect ideas, but you have to have some concrete and tangible ways in which you are leading in social change. And for us, social change is really a concept that we use to describe the impact of the work, because Tekano is ultimately, we work with fellows to support fellows. As the program director, my role, and as well as the fellowship manager, our role here is to enable and to provide an institutional muscle to support the work of fellows. So we're here to enable fellows to catapult the fellowship community and grow a really important community of social change leaders that will ultimately, be accountable or is accountable to the broader South African society and how we shift and advance towards health equity, right? So that's the plan that we're trying to do. Kayla, I don't know if that's sufficient. Do you have any follow-up questions?
No, that definitely put my mind a bit at ease. Obviously, like you said, coming from the academic space, I've only had experience in the academic space. So I think for me, it would be, if I were to come into the program, it would be about making those connections and meeting people and finding out what I'm interested in and where I can be of most help. Exactly. So thank you. Yeah. Thanks for that one.
And this, as someone who comes from the academic space as well, this is going to be an important learning ground, right? Because Tekano teaches you tools and builds connections that you will never be able to do through the academy. So it is about learning and figuring yourself out. So it's going to be a lot of work to just kind of understand, right? There's even the social justice sector outside of, the academic constructions of what social justice is. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All righty, Mimi.
Thank you so much. This really does sounds like an exciting program. I'm very much interested. However, I wanted to find out, because I joined the meeting, I think 6 minutes after you have started. I'm more interested on the format for the fellowship. Is it your face-to-face? Is it virtual? And are you likely mostly to share during this current session in terms of the frequency as well throughout the year for contact sessions, especially for some of us who are also working as well? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mimi. That's a very important question. So we are doing, so just in terms of the fellowship, so what we have, just so that all of you can know, is that we have an induction year, and so we call, the induction year fellows our year-long fellows. And because, our induction year is a year long, so we'll have our year-long, and in that year-long, the expectation is that you'll attend 3 to 4 modules. And these modules are, they are learning experiences. They're not really, we need to do away with this kind of modular language, but anyway, that's my work. But there are learning experiences that we're trying to offer fellows, right? And like we had the international module, for example, in Cuba, and that was a contact module. In the past, we've had, face-to-face modules. So, it would be in a particular context at a particular appointed time. So a module might happen here in Cape Town, for example, or in Stellenbosch, and we'll explore the different partners, activists in these different spaces. So it could be anywhere in the Western Cape. And we're trying to also kind of, because we are a national fellowship, we are a South African fellowship, we try and go to different places. So the Eastern Cape is also one space that we could explore, understanding the Eastern Cape health system, for example, and it depends. So these modules also have specific thematic areas. So it could be that, we work on ideas of collective leadership and change. And so there's particular ideas that we'd like to explore, and there'd be a context that would be incredible to explore that in. We might, for example, have the module in Gqeberha with activists there. We could we could go to KZN, and there's some fellows, there's, people there that can really support us in our thinking and deepening, the questions that we have around how to actually, employ and implement social change strategies around a particular area. So it depends on obviously the host organizations or the organizations that is willing to have us. We're also, shifting to a more hybrid model or approach where we will have both, offerings, learning experiences virtually as well as in person, just because, we're obviously trying to speak to climate change and not encourage so much traveling and all of these other things that's required for meeting face-to-face. But we also acknowledge the importance of face-to-face and how important that is, that we can't really get through the virtual experience. So we are kind of stretching our experiences along the way. So there's no specific, so a module might be a week long, right? The learning experience might be curated for a week, which is the maximum we'll ask you to sit into a session. You know, in this role, I wouldn't expect anyone to sit for longer than a week. And a week is a little bit too much. So, you know, 4 days, 3 days of intensive work, and then, you know, 2 days of downtime before we then travel back to our communities. And, you know, you are expected to work in groups, you're expected to work, you know, with fellow people, with other spaces, what will really stretch you to kind of be comfortable in making connections, to building collective strategies, right, for impact. And to explore collective agency together, and how do we do collective leadership, right? Coming from these diverse perspectives, holding these diverse lenses in how we approach the particular issues we are seeking to address. So that's the kind of, so Mimi, so what cuts across, we both virtual and in person. And, you know, and it will probably happen after every, like, you know, once a quarter, right? That will introduce a learning experience, and many of it. So some will be mandatory, but I don't think the expectation will be too much from you in those mandatory sessions. So we do also offer then skills experiences or skills developments, you know, where you want to maybe hone in on a particular skills. Like, for example, you know, in the past we had fundraising workshops where to understand the kind of fundraising landscape in the sector, but also to be able to like do proposal writing, how to write to grants, to funders, and how to kind of build a strategic grant model to then speak to these different funders. So that could be a particular skills, or media and development skills. And we do leverage from our community as well as, you know, our different stakeholders or partners that we work with in the space to support that. So Frame Media, for example, supported us with supporting fellows with media skills. So understanding how to approach media, how to engage with media, how to talk, you know, on camera with the news, right? Or to write an op-ed, or, you know, so these different kinds of skills offerings that we also offer. I think the more important part is that then post your induction year, and like Sadie, you celebrate it in the community to kind of acknowledge this journey. And it's an intensive journey, it's rigorous, it's really intensive in terms of, because it's a personal journey, right? And so we honor a deeply personal process in a, you know, and that personal, recognizing that the personal is also very political. So it's a lot of political work, it's a lot of grappling. So it's hard work in that first kind of year to land in the fellowship. But then you become, you know, a lifelong fellow, which means that you have access to various opportunities for learning, you know, including various, I mean, we have the Science Business School who's offering some stuff that's open to our fellows, Atlantic fellows. We have, you know, narrative change workshops. So there's currently, so Sandokazi, our fellowship manager, is currently in Australia with other lifelong fellows engaging on Indigenous health systems. And there's a whole convening there around the Indigenous communities in New Zealand and Australia, and how they all are bringing and exploring ideas of indigeneity in the health system, and kind of, you know, bridging this biomedicine world with kind of, you know, Indigenous perspectives on health. Yeah, so that's Mimi. I don't know if that kind of, you know, touches, I know I try to speak broadly about different things, but I'm also mindful that I need to address your specific questions. Does that address your question around what the asks then are from the fellowship?
Definitely, that was quite comprehensive. Thank you. Thank you so much. Looking forward to this exciting opportunity. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mimi. So Star, and then is it Pamela?
Hello, Lance. Thanks a lot for your information. It gives us a more clear view on how we're gonna tie, or how I'm gonna tie the application, because I'm yet to apply. So I hear you spoke about your previous cohort of fellows that were into media and stuff. So I was thinking to myself, have you had more fellows actually apply from the arts, and has anything substantial come out from that?
So your question is, have we had fellows in the cohort apply
Yes, in
from
previous
media?
cohorts.
Yeah.
Yes. So have you had fellows from previous cohorts apply, like that are in touch with the arts?
Oh, we're looking for artists. We've had, yeah. So we have one particular fellow who has used dramaturgy and as a form of healing, of art-based healing, right? So using then, this fellow is a theater maker and an actor. And so what they've created is kind of curate spaces for healing, and they draw on indigenous kind of decolonial approaches to healing. So they really supported our conversations, and they're currently busy with a collaborative project with fellows, obviously in the global community in Brazil, and in, I can't remember the exact kind of parts of South America right now, but they're busy with series of interventions around using art as a form of healing. I know that they're also busy with brain health interventions with some fellows from Ireland. So they've managed to connect their work, and that's one fellow, Bondera. So they've connected their work to the particular kind of issues that we explore through the fellowship journey. So there's a lot of other, so there's this one fellow in, so first of all, art and artistic expression is widely explored in the Atlantic community. At Tekano, we've really haven't been that successful in attracting artists. And to be honest, I'm looking for really incredible artists that can guide us and support us in how we kind of take this work to the next level, right? So I definitely encourage you to apply. And I think the difficulty is, how do you, if you have a really good sense of how for art to meet activism and advocacy.
Go to the bathroom.
Sorry, Naledi, for the bathroom. Are you okay? Yeah. So so we have had really, and there's some really nice experiences from other kind of programs. For ours, I think Bondra has been the only artist that applied coming into the program as artist. Many other fellows, including myself, are exploring the arts, and are exploring different art modalities in trying to kind of do really creative advocacy. So yeah, and I can speak a little bit about that. I mean, one example is, for example, with Sweat, we've had a series of art interventions, right? That so Sweat is the sex worker advocacy and education task force, and they've used art-based strategies for interventions, including kind of theater. They started the Sweat theater. There's also been a different artistic expressions that has been used in the struggle for the decriminalization of sex work in South Africa. So that's some of the kind of art modalities that we've explored. And many fellows are kind of grappling with and integrating, approaching or using art as a medium for advocacy in health equity. Is that clear, Star? Do you want me to expand a little bit more?
Add a lot of context to my application and my wider view of how I'm going to approach it. So thanks a lot, Lance.
Okay, thanks, Star. Pamela?
Thanks, Lance. Hi to everyone. Apologies if you went through this. I just wanted to know what relationship does the fellow have with the host organization? And another thing, I think this is going to be an unfair question, but which has been the most successful project that you've had, or the most successful fellow, and what attributes or I'm sorry. What attributes did they bring on the table to make them the most successful? And how do you measure success as well?
We don't measure success. Success for who? So let me start with your first question around host organizations. So host organizations have been, and this is something that I'm busy revising. I've been working to really connect our intentions with our strategy. So our strategic imperatives with host organizations is that these are organizations that we partner with. And for some, it would be that fellows bring in the host organization to support them, right? So, or it could be like, your employee, right? So say you're working for Sonke Gender and Justice, for example, and you are running a really incredible campaign and you want to use that as a social change initiative or your, quote unquote project. So then that becomes, then your host organization, because it won't make sense for you to bring out another organization when your employees already kind of support you in this work and you're already running this campaign that Tekano can support, and the networks, and you can leverage off, Tekano's networks and Tekano's relationships to enable and amplify the campaign or the social change initiative that you are working on. So those are for fellows who are really kind of, coming in and they know exactly what they are doing. They've already, they have a host organization, there's an organization supporting them. You get other groups of fellows, which is more like Sadie them, where they come into a space and they collectively conceptualize a project together during the fellowship year, and they then request for Tekano, or they come up with themselves to establish the relationship with that organization, right? And so then Tekano will support that organization to support the fellows and to enable the fellows. And by support, I mean, we then ask we provide resources to the organization to kind of support in various ways, including mentorship, including bringing in capacity from the organization to support the work, to align fellows, this kind of social change initiative or this project to the actual work of the organization, so that it doesn't seem like an add-on thing the organization then have the burden to carry. So that's kind of a particular approach. Other approaches, could be that actually, there's already a group of fellows that's coming from, that's already kind of been working together, maybe as colleagues and friends, and they've identified a number of different, partners they want to work with. And so they then select these partners as their series of kind of organizations, and actually the resources are then to the fellows to self-organize and draw those relationships to the fellow. So Tekano again is there to amplify, to kind of support and provide institutional support and then a mechanism for enabling these relationships, but more importantly, enabling relationships for impact, right? So what we want to see, and this probably then leads to your second question, for us, we want to see social change initiatives that, that have structural impact, that can show. So if you are, for example, there's a medical doctor in Bonteheuwel who's in Cape Town, for example. This is now a community in Cape Town, a colored working class community, for example. So there's a medical doctor embedded in that clinic, and they are they're the facility manager of that facility, but they are employing practices that's really going to kind of, that are amazing in terms of strengthening the health system, in terms of kind of building the culture of that facility, but it provides a really nice example for, as a learning for how facilities need to kind of transform to, to address various issues. So it could be, a queer-friendly facility, for example, and that is kind of a best practice example for then having bigger impact. So if it's then, a fellow working as that medical doctor in that facility, coming up with these innovative solutions and ideas for doing this work, and they are then able to show how that connects to bigger change and how they want to work towards bringing their insights to kind of, allow different facility managers across the Western Cape or across the country to kind of, learn, think together, create symposia for engaging around that issue, then that's impact, right? So then, so that's one example. I'm just showing you one example of what impact could look like. Another kind of form of impact is, I mean, there are so many fellows. So one example of another fellow who's doing really incredible work, like Sis Dudu has been working for over 25 years to actually decriminalize sex work, to enable a health system and public services, the public system, to be responsive and to recognize sex work as work in this kind of neoliberal capitalist society where, and in a context where unemployment is really high. But more importantly, as a public health imperative, where sex workers are, are being, targeted, raped and killed for doing their work and for what they do. But more importantly, that it's also to do, sex workers are policed, condoms are confiscated, which are given by the public system. So the public system provides condoms to sex workers to ensure that they, obviously don't contract STIs and HIV in particular, because they're constructed as a high-risk group. But at the same time, the state also then uses condom use to then profile sex workers and then to arrest them under the criminal policy. So Sis Dudu has been working endlessly, and our Sweat colleagues and Mothers for the Future, Sisterhood, all Asijiki, Sisonke, which are all organizations and movements who are connected to this kind of bigger cause of the decriminalization of sex work. So a fellow like Sis Dudu, who's doing really incredible work and is now actually, we're now progressing to the bill, have been drafted and formalized, submissions have been written, and we might see that that sex work is fully decriminalized in the near future in South Africa, which will create, huge lessons and learnings and advocacy and resistance across the world, right? So, is that a successful fellow? So, there's so many different fellows working in various different ways. Other fellows are community health workers, mobilizing community health workers, advocating for the inclusion of community health workers in the formal health system, to be recognized for their labor and the work that they are doing, especially now that, they call the foot soldiers of the health system, but yet, the health system doesn't acknowledge them and in their labor. So there's a lot of unpaid care work that's being done. And there's a whole lot of stuff. So they could, other fellows could be working in policy spaces, really taking, some of these interest lenses and experiences around purple economies and building feminist care politics, and really kind of advocating for policies to be inclusive of, of various understandings of what labor practices is. Mobilizing with unions, etc. So I'm just trying to give you kind of an expansive approach of what our fellows are working on and what they are doing. Some are influencing the city of Cape Town, for example, Bells, who's doing really incredible work with their petty bylaws and their kind of evictions that they're imposing on, people who are occupying land in various ways. So Bells is working with folks in the occupation of land project. Butami, endless fellows who are just doing really incredible work, and it's very difficult to say which fellows do, because actually everyone's doing really impressive cutting edge work. Sadie has a whole big social media following, and she does her sexual reproductive health and rights, HIV advocacy, everything around, her experiences, her understanding of, of these broader issues, being an HIV positive activist in, in South Africa today, being a queer activist in South Africa today, which is important, incredible work, cutting edge in kind of creating also virtual and digital communities to do advocacy. So learning so many lessons from Sadie about how do you do virtual activism. And that's why she's our mascot in Tekano. Sending you love, Sadie. So so cross-cutting various issues our fellows are working at. Fellows are working collectively and not just in silos, and that's what we mean by catalytic community, is that you're able to leverage off, because we know that we can't solve the world's problems by ourselves. And so the point of Tekano is that you are coming into a space, into a community where people are, you have access to a network of people wanting to address the problems in our society, and doing it in a way that, that is supportive, that enables collective, action, and that, that you're just there in a community, breathing, thinking, ideating, doing things together, and that you're not alone in this kind of social justice sector, which can be also a very difficult sector to be in. Right. Yeah. And when I say social justice sector, I don't mean in the kind of, that only exclusively to a sectorial thing, but even people who apply social justice lenses to their work, I consider you part of this kind of space. And so, yeah, and we are a social justice organization. Thanks, Pamela. Is that sufficient? Does that provide you with kind of a comprehensive understanding of what our fellows are doing, what's considered impact or success? And I mean, like fellows, for me, it's just proven track record of the work, passionate about the work. That's what we want. We want people, and people who are really about the work, right? That wants to be supported for the work that they're doing, can show that they are working, even with limited resources. They're able to work with others. And even if you're afraid to kind of, work with others, you're able to really use this opportunity to put yourself out there, to make connections, to build connections, and to kind of learn those skills, because you also understand the importance of it, right? Of working collectively.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate how comprehensive you're answering all of these questions. You also really sound very passionate about the work, and it's very infectious. It just really sounds like a tribe of really like-minded people coming together and just trying to do their best. And yeah, it sounds really amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pamela. Any other questions? I hope I'm not doing too much blah, 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 and that you actually these are useful insights for even how you approach the application, but also how you understand Tekano and how you're part of the Tekano catalytic community of social change. I'm seeing, so the host have their hands up. And Tommy, is that you? Or...
Yes, it's me, Lance.
Okay, yes.
It's just a question that's in the chat. It's from Cindy, who says she's down with a cold, so she can't speak. But she says, you mentioned last year's group went to Cuba. What was the significance of the trip, or what is the significance of international travel in general for the fellows?
Thank you so much, Cindy, and hope you get well soon. Please rest, drink lots of water. I know with the change of season can be quite difficult. So sending you lots of care and rest, and hope you're able to take care of yourself. So with regards to Cuba, I mean, Cuba was just an incredible experience all round, but the significance of it, I mean, the key objectives was, and this was obviously conceptualized with the intention of really building, so there are some foundational concepts and learnings that we gain in the kind of induction year. And like concepts, like I said earlier, neoliberal capitalism, and how that kind of political economy impacts on, even how health is understood in South Africa as a commodity, because under capitalism, we know that, the commodification of health, that's why we have to pay for health care in our country, and why healthcare is not actually a public good. So we introduced these ideas in the modules, right, leading up to, I mean, everything is connected, right, because the conversations expand to reiterate the importance of the national health insurance, the history of the South African health system. But Cuba was important because we needed to understand, we wanted the fellows to get an experience of an alternative political and political economic system that governs the way in which healthcare is understood, and also the ways in which, you know, Cuba has achieved universal health coverage means that they, you know, meaning that many people their health outcomes are significantly, you know, improved over time. They've really good, I mean, they've managed to, you know, eradicate HIV in many ways, but not in terms of the LGBTIQ plus community, and we were there to explore it. But they, you know, their rates of HIV, their rates of TB, of all the kind of infectious disease and communicable diseases, they've showed significant improvements, right? But more importantly, you know, they've also developed the COVID vaccine during COVID. So they've really done, and then obviously Cuba had this big task, you know, this kind of big, human resource sharing through global solidarity, right? By sending, you know, their health workers to different countries in the time of crises. And so, you know, so there is that kind of, so we wanted to explore the alternative health system. What is it about this Cuban health system and the architecture and the way it's being configured that has enabled all the success in their health system? But then also obviously situating their health system with their healthcare system, which is kind of the hospitals, the facilities, the way in which the health system is arranged to deliver healthcare services is situated and nested in a broader economic system, which they obviously, many of you know, that Cuba operates under kind of a communist socialist values, right? So many say communist, others say socialist, but yeah, there's kind of, you know, a political system and an economic system that is different from the kind of normative neoliberal democracy that we adopted as South Africa post our revolution. The other significance, obviously, in the layers was around the actual history, so the historical significance of these two revolutions. South Africa, in our revolution, some say it's a revolution, others contest whether it was a revolution because we're not seeing the fruits of it. And then, you know, the Cuban Revolution, but also how Cuba and South Africa, the bilateral relationship. I mean, Cuba supported the ANC in various ways, you know, so understanding the stories of Cuba from, you know, from the comrades, and many of you who are, you know, in the schooling of the ANC politics and was raised in that kind of understanding of ANC, but also at the time, right, the Angolan War, all of that has contributed to the success of the overthrow of the apartheid government. So there's a whole lot of historical significance and conversations about the Cuban Revolution. And then the health system was key to why, you know, the revolt happened, and when the revolution happened in Cuba, that the health system was, you know, the key driver for change in Cuba, because they foregrounded the health system. They trained doctors, nurses, care professionals. They kind of equalized and disrupted kind of these hierarchies of in kind of the economic system to enable really expansive approach to how, you know, to health. And so they are definitely kind of, you know, picking the fruits of the histories, but also Cuba is currently struggling. And so it's also the reality of that, you know, is it, and we can also see, I mean, going there, we could understand some of the nuances of then how neoliberal capitalism plays itself out in that context. So also understanding these contextual factors. So in essence, I mean, I'm just kind of providing you an overview about the objectives, but in essence, that, you know, that was a key learning, you know, trip to build partnerships, to build solidarity. And we're continuing with our relationships that we've built in Cuba in various ways, and there'll be different processes, you know, learning experiences that will continue this conversation with around Cuba, but more importantly, how the learnings that fellows have gained through their engagements in Cuba can support and inform their work that they're doing in our context, and that they can draw on those lessons to enable kind of policy development, research, you know, the activism and advocacy around the NHI, really seeing that this is happening, right? I mean, imagine your perspective being so broadened. I mean, I've been advocating for the NHI, but I've never been confident in kind of what the possibilities are until I went to Cuba. So it's that kind of reality in even the design of the system and how primary healthcare is actually done on the ground, you know, where doctors are seen as kind of, you know, champions of health in communities, that every single person have a relationship with their medical doctor in the community, and the doctor does their walks and they know everyone by name. And we've seen it. Fellows will say, Sadie will tell you about how, you know, that happened. So these international modules are there to enable, to support, to help, to generate and inspire fellows to come back and then do the work, learn the lessons, build solidarity relationships, and actually understand that, you know, the challenges that we are facing is not limited to our context, that actually there's a global project here and there's a global solidarity project that's important. I'll pause there. Cindy, I hope that answered your question. If you have any follow-ups, please share in the chat and I'll ask Ntombi to just follow up. I'm seeing that we have, so Mimi, do you want to, and then Sipokazi. So let's give Sipokazi a chance and then Mimi afterwards, just because you had a chance earlier, Mimi. Sipokazi?
Oh, thanks, Lance. Can everybody hear me?
I can, yeah. So I think
you.
everyone can hear you clearly.
All right, thanks a lot. Other than being a fellow or being in the what do you call it, lifelong learning space, is there another space Tekano has for learning, for connecting, collaboration? I don't know if you hear what I mean.
Yes, so if you're not a fellow, can you still be part of the catalytic community of change?
Yes, yes.
And the short answer, I mean, the fellowship program is one avenue for us building, and it's actually the main kind of avenue, right? Because that's what we are mandated to do as an organization, because our mandate is to deliver this high impactful fellowship program, and then to kind of understand how that fellowship program and the fellows are making impact and achieving health equity in the various contexts. So there are various ways outside of the fellowship program, including, you know, partnering with us, engaging with us. I mean, there are so many. I mean, I refer to my colleagues at Sweat. Dudu is our only fellow, but we have so many relationships with the different people in the different organizations. And, you know, at our events, I don't know if any of you know of the big Umzabalazo event that we hosted in late March, early 1st of April, actually. You know, everyone came, you know, to support, to kind of ideate, to bring themselves into conversation, to experience the artists and all these offerings that we were creating and curating. So there's a space for you to kind of connect in those ways. There's also spaces, you know, where we invite people to contribute to our modules and our learning experiences, to come and give input. You know, if you're a thought leader, if you're someone who can contribute to ways. So there's definitely opportunities for how you could engage and connect to the community. And if you are someone who are grassroots and doing the work and want to engage, definitely reach out to us, connect to us. And we can make that opportunities come to life as we meet and have conversations and be collectively in that space. And we do support. So there are many organizations and projects that we've supported that hasn't come from fellows, who are just really powerful, impactful people doing really incredible work. And so we'll find a way to support that work and connect it to kind of what we are trying to do through the fellowship program. Don't know if that makes sense, Sipokazi.
It does, it really does. And thank you so much. I think I will explore that. Thanks a lot, because I will not be applying this year for a fellowship, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sipokazi. All the best to you. Mimi?
Thank you so much. Just a quick one. I just wanted to find out the average intake per cohort in terms of the numbers looking at the previous 4 cohorts. Thank you.
So we've had different numbers for our cohort 5. We are anticipating accepting about 20, between 22 and 25 fellows, depending on the depending on the appetite. I don't know how else to explain it. So depending on how many fellows, how many strong fellows we get that kind of meets the requirements, depending on, how many passions, or when we actually invite you for an interview. And there's a process, right? So we have an ARP process, which is basically like we have partners that we work with who supports us in this process to ensure the rigor and credibility of the selection process. So there are selection people with these fellows who are partners, or all key people in kind of health, equity, and social justice, who will review your applications and provide us with feedback. We will then review it, create a long list, invite the long list candidates, for conversation, and then create a short list, and then have, I think, specific kind of interviews for the short list, and then select. Yeah, so about 20, I'm anticipating about 22 fellows, but it will depend on kind of how the process goes. But yeah, we in the past, Sadie's cohort was 16 fellows in total. My cohort was like, well, how many were we? We were like 35 fellows. We were quite a bit. So it just depends on kind of what the strategic imperatives are for that year, what we are looking for to build the fellowship community. Because remember, we also kind of want diversity in our space. We encourage that because it's through diversity that we get the richness of lenses and perspectives, but we also can grapple with contestation, which is important. Because it needs to reflect kind of, our broader South African society and how we're grappling with stuff. But also we have an inclusive mandate as part of our values. So we want to be able to encourage, if we are a health equity organization, it's important, and a health equity fellowship program, it's important to then, have fellows reflect the lived realities of South African people. And so that's what we want to do through our fellowship, and the ways in which these leaders are, taking up the work in the various contexts, including, so we consider issues of kind of provincial, representation. So we have an oversupply of Johannesburg and Cape Town fellows, because obviously, and it makes sense because it's kind of urban spaces, and many of our fellows might be from the Eastern Cape, like myself. I'm from the Eastern Cape, but I'm based in Cape Town. But it's still, it's significant for then where the work and the resources are going to which kind of, geographical space the resources go to. So provincial issues, rural, urban divide is important to consider. Obviously, race will always be important in our considerations of any kind of form of selection, community building, community. So, issues of race are considered in representation. Sectors, obviously we want, with the arts question, we want artists right now, and we're going to be looking for incredible artists who are doing amazing things, because there's an undersupply of that in the current fellowship program, and we want to hone in on diverse sets of skills, tools, strategies, so we can learn with and from each other. And yeah, so that's how we're trying to nurture the fellowship community, by bringing in these kind of specific things. So yeah. Mimi, is that sufficient? Is that okay?
Sufficient. Thank you so much.
Okay, great, fantastic. So any other questions? Anything I can support you with? Any other technical questions about the application process itself? Don't forget to email the recruitment email, and Ntombi is also posting all the relevant details Pamela?
Yeah, just a technical question.
Yeah.
Right after you close, when do you start approaching candidates for the interview? So when are we going to hear back feedback from the applications, basically?
Yeah. So we've already kind of taken the next step. So already for some of the fellows, so every week we obviously review how many fellows come in to then, see, to kind of track, who we are getting, which geographical space, which, et cetera, so that we can also then understand how to target our recruitment campaign so that we can reach the people, that we haven't reached yet. And so, and with that also means that we send out the ARP. So, as fellows, as the applications are coming in, we are already sending to our panel and our different panelists who are sitting with who are reviewing fellows' applications. So we can only start communicating when obviously the last batch of applications have been received by the 30th of April. So once that process has been underway and all of the decisions are made based on the whole pool of fellows, because we need to review each and every application with a lot of detail and kind of understand, and situate the particular application in relation to the broader pool. And then, so it will probably take about 3 weeks to a month for us to then get back to you. And I mean, I'm also just kind of speaking high level, right? So don't hold me to these dates. But it will probably take a bit of time for us to then, get the shortlist together. But the idea is, in essence, that so if I'm just trying to work backwards. So if we want to do our first call in July, so by mid-July, we should have made the announcement of who our cohort 5 fellows are. So if we backtrack from there, then we should be, so from May, you should have heard from us, right? You should have heard from May and June. Between May and June, you should be participating, engaging, be invited for an interview. So between May and June, if you haven't heard from us, then yeah, it just means that your application has not been successful for this round. Also, I mean, it is also important for you to follow up with where the process is. So do email our recruitment email so that so that we are aware and we can respond to you, and then track your application to know where it is, and not just assume that we know what, or yeah, that the process isn't at a particular stage. Rather contact us, keep in communication, like connect with us. That's a much better way of engaging and staying connected to the community as well. And beyond just the application process, right? We are excited to hear from you. We're excited to learn. We're excited to invite you to different learning experiences, even if you're not a fellow. And we're trying to, and I'm definitely going to make it sure that for this cohort, we definitely bring people along with us beyond just the fellows that we then select, because to be honest, there's been some incredible applications all around coming through this year. So it's going to be tough to choose from. Okay, so any other kind of final questions? I also don't want to drag the process. If folks feel confident that they are ready to tackle the kind of applications, if you need, I mean, if you also need time, or there's a problem, or just communicate with us so we know where you are at. Yeah, obviously we'll try and keep to we will keep to the 30th of April deadline, but life happens. So it's important for you to communicate with us, if something happened and you're unsure whether your application has gone through, or you're not too sure what happened or something, just communicate to us using our different platforms for how you can engage with us to find out and to figure out where you are at. Even if you are running a bit late and you want the Google, rather communicate with us than to just treat it as, oh, that opportunity has just left and it's not coming back again. We are also people on this side. We're not robots. So the commencement date is in August. So from August onwards, our first module or our first learning experience will take place in July, August. Yeah. But there'll be a proper induction, there'll be a proper, like everything there will be a process, right? That you'll definitely be heavily informed. We'll contract with you. There'll be, all of the stuff will be in place for you to be ready to take up the fellowship. Okay, that means I'm anticipating that the silence means that we are good to go, and that I'm looking forward to seeing all of your applications and reading it, apart from Sipokazi, who won't apply this year. I hope that you will apply next year, Sipokazi.